Moto Grand Prix of Japan. It's round 17 in our record-breaking campaign. Trips to Mandalika, to Phillip Island and Sepang still to come on our quartet of overseas flyaway races. It all kicks off though here under what are gloriously sunny blue skies at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Coming up next in MotoGP, it's a 15-minute Q1 session which will feature our reigning world champion, how much longer we've been saying that for, Jorge Martin, and Alex Marquez, who crucially is the only rider who can stop Brother Mark from capturing that 7th MotoGP World Championship right here this weekend at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Coming up then in Q1, Aldeguer, Bastianini, Martin, Agora, who's done an excellent FP2 second fastest in front of his home crowd, Alex, Morbidelli, Binder, Chantra, Rins, Miller, Nakagami, HRC Wildcard, Oliveira and Vinales. Already safely through into Q2 have gone Betseki, who rebounded after 2 crashes yesterday morning to top the leaderboard yesterday. Pedro Acosta second fastest on Friday. Straight rapid out the gate this morning was Acosta fastest in FP2. Marc Marquez was 3rd fastest once again. The factory Ducati rider in the gravel at turn 5. Mir, Don Antonio, Marini, Bagnaia, Quartararo, Fernandez and Zarco. Those 10 already safely through into Q2. Trying to be positive, trying to look at the glass half full yesterday was Alex. When asked about his thoughts on what is a very, very rare appearance in Q1, his first in pretty much a year. Last time he was in Q1 was in Mandalika in Indonesia about a calendar year ago. He said, well, it might not be a bad thing, extra 15 minutes of track time to try and figure out some of the front-end confidence issues which have dogged him throughout day one. So Q1 appearance for the first time this year for Alex. Of course, we've mentioned this so many times, if you are joining us for the first time this weekend, in terms of the championship picture, Mark needs to outscore Alex by 3 points at the end of this Japanese Grand Prix weekend to be crowned world champion. So we've got one Marquez brother already in Q2. A bit of debrief there that Mark is selling with his Michelin tyre technician, because although he was once again fast and at the sharp end of the timesheets in FP2, it had its problems once again for 93.
Yeah, crash out turn 5 if you're just joining us for Marc Marquez. He wasn't the only rider to go down there in that session. Fabio Antonio did the same moments earlier. But we'll see both of those in qualifying 2. Will we see the Moto2 world champion and Japanese hero, Ai Ogura? Well, the evidence of free practice 2 moments ago suggests that he's got more than half a chance. Ended second quickest in FP2 earlier on this morning. And of course we have seen Ai Ogura qualify as high as 5th. That remains his best MotoGP qualifying on debut in Buriram earlier in the year. A track layout not completely dissimilar to this one, very much stop and go in nature, which does tend to bring the best out of Ai Ogura. And if fan power was enough to power him around this circuit, you can pretty much guarantee him a place in Q2.
Fans on top of that main grandstand have a wonderful vantage point to the majority of this sprawling Mobility Resort Motegi complex. Enea Bastianini, one of several riders who was within touching distance of booking a place directly into Q2. Enea 9 of a second behind Johan Zarco in 10th place. Well, it's all smiles back in the factory Ducati garage right now, as Mark's had a little bit of a chat with Davide Tardozzi, debriefing what was a rather complicated FP2 session for 93. All MotoGP riders, welcome to Japan. Well, the whole MotoGP paddock always gets a very warm welcome, doesn't it, in this beautiful part of Asia. It's always fantastic to make our annual visit into the Motegi Mountains. They bring the wonderful, don't they, to the grandstands here. The Japanese fans, who are very, very creative. Probably some of our most creative fan base in the whole world in terms of their wardrobe choices and how they show their appreciation and affection for their chosen riders. And they come armed with an array of gifts, which, I have to say, take a lot of time and effort when you look at some of the presents that are given to riders and some of our colleagues as well.
Just ask our own Jack Appleyard in pit lane, who was gifted a ceramic apple with a cartoon journalist on the front of it, which certainly didn't take a couple of minutes work. It certainly took a lot of hard work to make that together. So certainly someone here in the Mobility Resort Motegi has suddenly got their favourite MotoGP journalist who's working away down in pit lane. Jorge Martin out on track. Kind of an unusual Q1 session this, because we've got as many Ducatis out there in Q1 as any other makeup motorcycle in this Q1 session. 3 Ducatis are out there, both of the Gresini Ducatis, of course, Albuquerque and Alex Marquez, plus Frankie Morbidelli's GP24. We also have 3 Yamahas, basically the 3 Yamahas not ridden by Fabio Quartararo are in this session. We also have the 2 Hondas of Taka Nakagami, who we're now looking at, and Sonkat Chantra, 2 KTMs, both from Tech 3, and ultimately, of course, the 2 Aprilias that didn't make it through, Ayagura and Jorge Martin. So an unusually Ducati-heavy Q1 coming up. 3 in this session, well, one of them's guaranteed to miss out.
Yeah, and it was Frankie Morbidelli that so brilliantly styled Q1 a couple of years ago, the jungle, didn't he? A jungle which unfortunately he finds himself in at the moment, courtesy of a couple of crashes on practice Friday here in Japan. He has just shown, though, excellent speed in the early FP2 session, so certainly one to watch in terms of that top 2 will be Morbidelli. Alex then hard on the brakes into that 90-degree corner. He's sitting now just coming on to what will be his first flying lap in this Q1 session. As I mentioned, he was trying to look on the bright side of life yesterday after a pretty dismal Friday by his high standards so far this year. It's not like these extra 15 minutes on circuit were just giving that little bit of a chance to iron out some of those front-end issues which have dogged him throughout the opening day. This then now is Alex, head down, time attack mode. He's got current world champion Martin for company behind him. Several really strong braking zones now into turn 3. So where it went wrong on the last lap for Alex in that practice session. Yes, they just ran that little bit wide on the green, exceeding track limits, and that cost him a place in Q2.
There's so many areas of this Motegi circuit where you have to be very mindful of track limits. Remember, it cost Marc Marquez a pole position here last year when he put the green by millimetres coming out of turns 3 and 4. As we now pick up Alex Marquez from the overhead shot. This is through the left-hander now of turn 8. 9 Agura leading this group on track, so we'll get him across the line first. This is now turn 9 for Alex Marquez. And his brother watching on. His brother said yesterday at the end of practice, I want what's best for my brother, so I hope he advances through to qualifying 2, which is not something you often say about your nearest title threat, but it just underlines how close their brothers are, and Mark has a very close eye on his younger sibling now.
Nail-biting times already inside the factory, the Ducati garage for Mark. Of course, he has been in this position so often in his Grand Prix career, but even the very best will be feeling a little bit apprehensive, a little nervous going into one of the biggest days of Mark's career tomorrow. Let's not beat around the bush. I mean, he's about to complete one of the fairy tale stories, completing what will be one of the ultimate sporting comebacks of any sport in history if he is to get the job done here tomorrow. Frankie Morbidelli then it is that lays down the early marker in this Q1 section. Straight away into the 43, the 143.642 from Frankie. That's actually his best time of the weekend so far. So there is time available already in the early exchange of this Q1 session. Martin has immediately slotted up into second.
He's also set his best lap time of the weekend of a 43.727. That's remember, half a tenth quicker than he went yesterday, and he set that lap time up behind Alex Marquez. We saw them start their lap times together. Martin has now rolled out of this lap. Alex Marquez's initial attempt, not in the 43s, which he's going to have to be if he wants to place in qualifying 2. A 44.1 for Alex puts him in P7, and he's already making a better fist of it on lap 2.
Sure if Martin rolled out of that by choice, or whether he just made a mistake charging it up going into turn 5, a corner which has caught out so many. Mark was on the floor there, wasn't he, in FP2 earlier on this morning. Up toward the top end of the circuit then. This is into the bottom gear, turn 10, the hairpin curve. And then he back a full of throttle and wind that Ducati up to 60, up to 315 kilometers an hour. Down the hill on the downhill straight into the 90-degree corner. Everybody with the Marquez connections right now biting their nails, aren't they?
Yeah, Alex is the least nervous of them at the moment as they watch the 73, and this is just what I mentioned. This is how much threat he's got. This is how much competition he's up against. Agura on a 43.4 for the home fans goes top. Morbidelli improves to a 43.5, but it might not be enough to keep him in the top two. Here comes Alex Marquez. His second run is a 43.6. He's still going to find another couple of tenths.
That's 43.429 from Agura. We'll put him 6 on the time machines in practice yesterday. And this track feels like it's rubbered in quite nice, doesn't it? There's been some rubber laid down after all the track action yesterday. No overnight rain, almost perfect conditions here this morning in Motegi, conducive to some fast laps, and the riders are delivering. Agura then will be keeping the home fans very, very happy indeed. He now leads almost 800ths clear of Morbidelli. Those two then have got quite a significant gap then back to Alex. Yeah, it's not easy at all, is it, for Alex to find himself getting through to Q2. Andrea Brevio looking on. Are we going to get double representation in Q2 for the American-based Trackhouse Aprilia team? Of course, Raul Fernandez already directly through yesterday, having set the 9th fastest time. Not a bad recovery from Fernandez himself yesterday, because he had a pretty high-speed get-off very early on in FP1.
So Martin Thorpe, he's now got to find a quarter of a second to get into Q2. Aldeguer fifth on the second of the Gresini Ducatis. He's also set a 43.7. Then it's Miller, Binder and Rins in the 43s. Nakagami a 44 flat 9th ahead of Oliveira, Bastianini, Vinales and Chantra. A major exhaling of breath from Julia Marquez, who is watching this session from the confines of the Gresini box. At the moment, Gresini aren't getting a rider through to Q2.
You'd think he'd have learned after all these years to sort of get used to these sort of high-pressure situations, Julia Marquez. And Morbidelli then into the pit lane after what was an excellent first run by the Italian. He's in second place, just 0.73 of a second behind this man, Agura, who would love to be involved in the upcoming Q2 session. There is the blue-clad army of Agura fans. That will be swelled in ranks tomorrow when we get this home Grand Prix underway, 2 p.m. local time. Of course, adjust your watch to wherever you are watching in the world. I was very, very happy. 79 pounds. We've seen that gentleman on screen before this weekend, haven't we? With a 79 rather expertly cut into the left side of his head. That's just more hair envy for me in the commentary box, I'm afraid.
He's got the MotoGP logo shaved into the right side of his head, so he's still all bases covered, even if the side of his head is no longer covered by much hair. Frankie Morbidelli, we thought he's enough with a 43.5. He's not got an awful lot of time to play with here. The big threats coming, of course, from Alex Marquez, Martin and Aldeguer. We've not really seen anything from the trio of KTMs in this session to suggest that they can make a real bid for Q2. Binder down in 7th place. He was 17th yesterday. That's exactly where he's qualifying as it stands at the moment, and it has been a miserable weekend for Tech 3, especially Maverick Vinales, who at the moment cannot better a 44.7. That is his best lap time of the weekend, but he needs over a second to get into Q2.
Yeah, I mean, that's the longest of long shots as far as Vinales is concerned. Yesterday, he said it was more technical than physical that were his issues around the Motegi circuit. He's reporting very little pain now on that recovering left shoulder, first injured in Q2 in the Sachsenring. He said yesterday it was just chronic vibration, massive chatter he was suffering on that KTM around this Motegi circuit. So another tough weekend it looks like in store for the Spaniard. Oliveira has tucked in right behind Alex's Gresini Ducati. Not a bad strategy this by Miguel, because he knows that Alex really does have to get his head down and crack on to try and find a place in Q2. So to Aldeguer, who was so close, wasn't he? Yes, 8,000th in 11th place behind Zarco in 10th. He felt like he left a bit of time at turn 11 as well yesterday on his last flying lap, which would have put him directly into our second qualifying session. Aldeguer at the moment then in P5.
I spoke to John Zarco about that yesterday, who was the right side of that 8,000th of a second gap, and he said it makes so much of a difference to your weekend, not just in terms of where you're going to be starting on the grid, but just in terms of your mental state, your ability just to relax and to just recharge energy ahead of the rest of the weekend, knowing that you've already got the job done in qualifying and the guaranteed to be in the front 4 rows of the grid at the very least. Igora then starts his lap. He's currently the rider to beat in this session. You saw it on the pit board of Aldeguer as he started his lap. He knows it's a 43.4 that is the minimum requirement here.
He's putting him a good fight for it, you have to say right now, is Aldeguer. So too is Martin. Of course, these two closely connected in the Andorra Mountains, training buddies with the Espargaro brothers. Aldeguer then fires the GP24 out of turn 9. This is Alex then now on what's going to be his second time attack. How's Aldeguer getting on in that third sector? We'll keep a close eye on the graphic and bottom of your screen. This is going to be tight. This is going to be very, very close as far as the 54 is concerned. He found a mistake right here on his last lap in practice, cost him a direct spot in Q2. That looks all neat inside of this time around, doesn't it, from the 20-year-old Spaniard? Just 3 corners left through 12 and 13, then right through 14, and Morbidelli and Agura. They might be a little bit vulnerable here as we come over the line now with Aldeguer. He needs a 143.5, and he's got it, a 143.454. Squeezes then into that top 2. Good laps coming in by both Martin and Alex.
Martin's going to have to pick up some time now in that final sector if he's going to make his way through. So Morbidelli, who's now going quickly, has been bumped out of the top 2 and needs an immediate response. Martin then next to come across the line, rings into the 43s now, but only Martin moves up a place into 4. He's still a 10th of a second adrift.
Immediate response, which, to his credit, Morbidelli is currently delivering. Super rapid in the first 2 sectors. Oh, Alex isn't just a little bit hot there into turn 10. Yellow flags are out in the second sector. Is Aldeguer, which Morbidelli is currently delivering. Super rapid in the first 2 sectors. Oh, Alex isn't just a little bit hot there into turn 10. Yellow flags are out in the second sector. Is Aldeguer. Aldeguer's gone down into turn 5 once again. It's another turn 5 crash as Morbidelli and Alex try to slug it out here for P1 in this Q1 session.
Miller goes up into second place on a 43.4. There are now 3 riders on 43.4s and 2 on 43.5s. So Alex Marquez might need to get himself into the low 43s here, and particularly with yellow flags waving when he comes around and is...
Agura and Alex Marquez. Nothing really between third and fourth. 5,000 between Alex and Miller. Here is Alex then. Well, this is a massive lap, isn't it? Huge lap in terms of this Japanese Grand Prix and potentially the destiny of the World Championship. Could it be decided here this weekend in Japan?
Second down to 5th is incredibly close. Just 25 thousandths of a second covers Agura, Alex Marquez, Miller and Aldeguer all on 143.4s. So Alex Marquez does not need to improve by much here.
He's not showing it, Mark, but he is cheering on Alex inside his head. Just look at Mark, fixated on the screens inside the factory Ducati garage. That is some second sector, isn't it, by Alex? That is absolutely superb. At the moment, he's going to be cruising towards Q2.
And Oliveira right behind him is going quickly too. He's also up on Morbidelli, so Miguel might be rewarded here for some clever tactics in Q2.
Yeah, said just a moment ago, Oliveira might have got his strategy absolutely spot on. He left pit lane behind Alex. Has he got this call bang on the money? Lost a lot of time though in the third sector. Down into turn 11 goes Alex. Surely this is going to be good enough for Q2. He's almost a 10.5 up on Frankie Morbidelli as we go now into the final sector. Flicks it right through turn 14. And a wheel spin on the exit. Shouldn't cost him too much time. Over the line he goes. Alex Marquez into second. He did lose a fair amount of time in that fourth split, but he's into P2. Smiles on the faces of Mark and Papa Marquez. They enjoyed that one. Has Alex then done enough?
I'm not sure he has just yet, because Igora just set the fastest first sector. He's now back to third. Martin, as you can now see on screen, is also improving. Is that final sector going to cost us a big crash here for Brad Binder in that final sector? And that's going to put an end to the session.
Do you know what? I think it's all doing 12, isn't it? Could be a red flag. Because it looks like there's been some barriers.
I think that bike's ended up in the pit entry.
Yeah, there's been barriers cleared. Somebody else is down at turn 10 as well. That's the top end of the circuit, and he's top back in front of the picture.
Agura daily here. Agura, look, he's 2 tenths up, and it's Yamaha of Alex Rins that's in the gravel trap. That's cost Agura a place in Q2.
Got him for Agura. We clearly saw he came through the yellow flag zone for the rings crash. big old get off that, wasn't it, for Binder? He's had another tough weekend at the moment. Binder's going to be at best 18 on the grid. Alex did get out of line, of course, for one more time attack, but there he is himself. We're just going through turn 10. So those yellow flags, it looks like something pretty significant clear up, but yellow flags have just cleared in the final sector. I think Alex is 43.267. We'll see him go through. Tight at the top. 0.014, the second splitting Morbidelli and Marquez. This is where Binder went down hard on the KTM with a few moments ago.
Yeah, we don't know whether Igor did back off for the yellows in any way. He did do a 1:43.397 on that lap, so that would not have been enough to get into the top two, even without the yellows. So Alex Marquez, can't say he got away with one, he did the job all for himself, setting a 1:43.267. But the first major hurdle of this Super Saturday has been cleared for the 73.
Just shows fine margins and how different your weekend can be if you find yourself in that opening qualifying session. Spare a thought for poor old Bastianini yesterday on the Red Bull KTM Tech 3 machine. 12th, 9 found to the second away from the top 10. And he's going to start this Grand Prix 21st. That was a big get off the Binder. That is a fast old crash.
Yeah, the bike's gone all the way towards the pit lane entry. There's the pit entry in the far distance. And Brad Binder, that is about as fast a crash as you can have around this Motegi circuit. 160 kilometers an hour into turn 12.
He's trying to save it. He really is trying to keep it upright. But gravity takes over, and Binder now is just along for the ride. Happy to see the South African looks like he's relatively unscathed from what could have been a real nasty crash. There he parts company then with the RC16. Agura third in that session. Well, on his last lap when he came across the yellow flags right there at the top end of the circuit for the rings crash on the factory Yamaha. He was motoring towards Q2, a lap time which potentially was going to push Alex Marquez out of second. Do your best, go for it. Well, he did his best, he went for it, but he comes up short. There's the Japanese star. Morbidelli, a thumbs up from Frankie. Felt like yesterday he should have happened to be contending with this Q1 session. He had to do it. Job done. Morbidelli through with a win. Yesterday, he'd go for it. Well, he did his best, he went for it, but he comes up short. There's the Japanese star. Morbidelli, a thumbs up from Frankie. Felt like yesterday we should have happened to be contending with this Q1 session. We had to do it. Job done. Morbidelli through with a 1:43.253, which is the second fastest time of the weekend, only better by his VR46 stablemate Marco Bezzecchi.
So we're going to see the rings crash here. It's in the foreground, I think, just ahead of Iagura. You can see the bike being recovered, which confirms why Iagura, no matter what he did on that final lap, wasn't going to move up the order. The damage for the Aldeguer crash, which we saw from him at turn 5, 5th for him on a 43.4, so 15th on the grid for the rookie. And as far as Jorge Martin is concerned, who said there were no excuses coming this weekend, he's no longer in pre-season mode. But unfortunately, those shortfalls, those shortcomings on a soft tyre and time attack mode persist. Martin 7th, 17th on the grid for the world champion. But it is Frankie Morbidelli who tops qualifying 1, and crucially, it's Alex Marquez that joins him in the top 2. Agura 3rd, thwarted by some late yellows. Jack Miller 4th for Pramac, the Yamaha, ahead of Fermin Aldeguer and Miguel Oliveira, who took 6th. Martin 7th in the end, ahead of Brad Binder after his late crash 8th. Alex Rins 9th after he went down at turn 10. Nakagawa 10th from the Tech 3 KTMs of Bastianini and Viñales, who are split by Somcat Chantra.
So up next will be the battle for pole position number 17 in 2025, and that will feature Alex Marquez and Frankie Morbidelli on what could potentially be a decisive and pivotal weekend in our record-breaking and historic season. Marc Marquez trying to close out the World Championship. Up next then here at the Mobility Resort Motegi, we go qualifying in MotoGP Q2. Joining us then at the Mobility Resort Motegi, a couple of hours away from the hustle and bustle of the capital city of Tokyo here. It's the Moto Grand Prix of Japan. And every session we've had so far on track in MotoGP has had its own story. There's been so many dramatic moments already so far this weekend. Marco Bezzecchi, fastest rider on circuit on practice Friday after 2 crashes. Pedro Acosta was fastest this morning in FP2, was on the floor late on in the second session. Marc Marquez, third quickest yesterday, third fastest this morning despite a crash for him at turn 5. Mia, the Gian Antonio, Marini, Bagnaia, double winner here last year, Quartararo, Fernandez and Zarco, they'd already put their places into this second qualifying session in yesterday's dramatic and crash-strewn practice session. Negotiating their way out of the earlier 15-minute Q1 session was Frankie Morbidelli, who set the second fastest time of the weekend so far, 1:43.253, getting Frankie through into Q2. And perhaps the most significant moment of Sprint Saturday so far is Alex Marquez also getting himself into the second qualifying session as he looks to try and delay Marc's title celebrations potentially into next weekend's Indonesian Grand Prix in Mandalika. Absolutely beautiful day here in the Motegi Mountains. As always, no matter what corner of the globe we visit, there's mass support for 93 and 73. Of course, mathematically it is just the two of them now that could be crowned MotoGP World Champion 2025. The odds, of course, stacked massively in favour of Marc because 3 is the magic number. 3 points scored or more than brother Alex at the end of play tomorrow, after tomorrow's 24-lap Moto Grand Prix of Japan. And the rider you're looking at on screens, well, it won't be comeback loading, it will be comeback loaded, as Marc Marquez stands on the brink of his first MotoGP World Championship. What will feel like 6 very long years. At times, probably thought his best days are behind him after that career-threatening injury in the Spanish Grand Prix in Jerez back in 2020. It seems like Marc Marquez Mark II is even better than the original version of Marc Marquez at the moment, as he gets set then for this upcoming 15-minute Q2 session under the clear blue sunny skies. Also Ducati, fans young and old. None have made a longer journey than those two. Love seeing our Peruvian fans pop up on screens once again. The 15,000 kilometre trek from South America to the Motegi Mountains. Let's see if Marc can deliver the business then in this upcoming Q2 session.
Alex Marquez is a factor. He is a part of this Q2 session by relatively slim margins in Q1, but that was all it took. Alex Marquez is through to Q2, but how far up the grid can he get? Given what we've seen from him so far this weekend, if he does want some omens, some positive omens to draw upon, well, we have some for him. In the last 6 Grand Prix now, we've seen a rider come through qualifying 1 to qualify on the front row of the grid. Quartararo did it in the last couple of Grand Prix. Bezzecchi was one of 2 riders to do it in Hungary. He also, of course, did that in Austria when he took pole position. Bagnaia went from Q1 to pole in Brno, and Johan Zarco went from Q1 to the front row of the grid at the Sachsenring in wet conditions. So Alex Marquez has some history to potentially work in his favour in this Q2 session.
Alex only off the front row in 4 previous Grand Prix so far this year. Here's our most recent Q2 star in Japan, as the Shark fans are out in force. to see if Pedro Acosta can make it back-to-back pole positions here at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Set himself up nicely for another Tissot watch, having led the way in the early FP2 session. So here we go then, ahead of what could be one of the biggest days of Marc Marquez's Grand Prix career here in Japan tomorrow. One set for the battle for pole position here in the Grand Prix of Japan. Pecco Bagnaia eager to get on with business. The double winner here, of course, victorious in the sprint and the Grand Prix 12 months ago. And he looked to build some pressure on world championship leader Jorge Martin. It's Alexo that leads the pack then down into turn 3.
This is an interesting cameo, interesting snapshot here. What we're going to see, Marc Marquez has jumped onto the rear tyre of his teammate Pecco Bagnaia. We've been asking the question all weekend. Davide Terozzi already thinks he's got an answer as to whether Pecco Bagnaia is back. Well, Marc Marquez clearly thinks that Pecco Bagnaia is strong enough and confident enough to be worth following. Bagnaia, though, jumps out of the way and says to Marc Marquez, you go first. I'm not going to tow you around this Motegi circuit.
Just the 7 front row starts in the opening 16 Grand Prix for Bagnaia. It's not just been in sprints and Grand Prix where he's been suffering. He's really been struggling to put together hot laps in these qualifying scenarios throughout 2025 with those front-end confidence woes. Just making sure he's not impeding anybody on this outlap around here in Motegi. Acosta likewise. What's going on here with Acosta? He's got his arm up there. Is there some kind of a technical issue for Acosta? Well, this could be high drama. Look, he was almost banging the right handlebar there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's having a good look down, isn't he?
Yeah, he is again.
He's giving it a right good thump. Is he trying to get the ride height device? The ride height device doesn't look like he's down. It's totally up at the back, but Pedro Acosta has got some kind of problem with his KTM. If there's one rider who doesn't need qualifying problems, it's Pedro Acosta, because it's usually this section of the weekend where he hits problems.
It's like he's got no power. He keeps opening the throttle and nothing's happening. He was like smashing the right handlebar a couple of times there. Oh, dearie me. It's been going spectacularly wrong as far as Acosta is concerned. Without any question, without any doubt, he's going to be a big favourite for pole position coming into this Q2 session. He's coming back into pace, as you can see on the graphic on the left-hand side of your screens. Drama then once again in the Q2 session for Pedro Acosta and KTM.
Already then his chances of back-to-back Motegi poles have taken a serious dent as he now stomps into the back of the KTM box, and I suspect he'd want to be back out on track on that bike. He hasn't jumped straight onto bike number 2 and gone back out on the circuit, so Acosta already on his back foot in this Q2 session as Alex leads Marc on these initial laps.
Gotta love Acosta. He went proper old school there, isn't it? If it ain't working, let's just try and whack it and see. Just give it proper good old-fashioned bang and see if it gets itself back into life. I remember the old days, you used to sort of smack a TV on the side and see if you could get a picture on it. Joking aside, there's nothing really funny about this situation, is there, as far as Acosta's concerned, because he needs to be out there trying to stick that RC16 on the front row of the grid. Fastest this morning in FP2, and it was right here, wasn't it? We saw him coming out of turn 9. He was smacking the right handlebar as he exited 9, and you could see him, he was twisting the throttle, but nothing was happening whatsoever. It was almost like he was like speed limiter or something and engaged. I mean, it's going to be interesting to find out. Well, we know what's going to be happening. It's going to be a mystery electrical pump, isn't it? And what is not up for debate is this is costing Acosta crucial time.
Watch Marc here. This is a fast lap from Marc Marquez. It's the fastest rider of the trio we're following at the bottom of your screens. Through the first 3 sectors, we'll follow them across the line then. Alex is going to set the first lap, and Marc Marquez, we're expecting low 43s at the minimum here. It's a 43.4 for Marc Marquez. He goes on to provisional pole position. Pecco Bagnaia next to come across the line is a tenth of a second back.
And a frustrated spectator at the moment in this Q2 session is Acosta. What's going on, Jack?
Yeah, I think it's the rear ride height device, guys. We've just seen Poulter Rafton on that number 1 bike trying to apply some pressure on the rear, but it's not going anywhere. For some reason, that ride height device is blocked, and having to swap the tyres across the bike number 2.
Well, they had high-profile tech issues with the chain jumping off the sprocket, didn't they, last time in Misano? It looked like it wasn't engaging, was it? It wasn't stuck down. It wouldn't actually engage. Poor old Pedro Acosta. Let's hope they can get that issue rectified fairly shortly. No dramas at the moment as far as Mark's concerned. An early 1:43.413 has put him into provisional pole. Look at this lap though being fired in by Bagnaia at the moment. Bagnaia's one and only pole position so far this year came in Brno, and at the moment he's flying. So too is Bezzecchi on the factory Aprilia.
15.43.2 from Morbidelli in Q1. We saw a 43.1 from Bezzecchi in practice yesterday afternoon. Look at the Hondas coming to the party at the circuit that they own. We said they might be a genuine threat for the front two rows of the grid at the moment. Mir and Marini are backing that up.
They really are. Look at this then. 73, 93, 63, all in tandem down the hill into the 90-degree corner. Bagnaia was using the Marquez brothers there as the perfect reference. Mark rolls out of it. Alex back into pit lane. So a clear track now ahead of him goes Bagnaia. This is going to be close. 43.413 is Mark's provisional pole time. Over the line, Pecco goes. And Bagnaia, well, we are starting to believe that he well and truly is back. Pecco now fastest with a 1:43.341. Bezzecchi finds a factory pretty on the front row there in third place as well.
Watch Raul Fernandez, he's already up in fifth place. He could go onto the front row of the grid with this one. Fernandez goes fourth, lost a quarter of a second in that final sector. Honda's fifth and sixth with Marini and Mir. They've put mid-43s on the board.
Alex's opening salvo was a 1:43.981. That's around 7/10 slower than what he managed in Q1. That was a lap that Alex probably produced on a worn tyre. Of course, the big issue that you have when you go into that opening qualifying session is you have to burn up extra soft tyres. Quattararo making a big play here for the front row, if not better. Seventh at the moment is El Diablo. Over the line he goes, but up into third place once again. How does he keep on doing it? How does he keep dragging that WiseStar M1 onto front rows on Spring Saturdays? Quattararo now with a third with a 43.503.
Is there anybody better on a single lap of the circuit than Fabio Quattararo, who's going for 3 consecutive front row starts? So it's Ducati, Yamaha, the front row of the grid. Aprilia, Honda, the second row. Mir for Honda 7th, from Alex Marquez 8th, although would one suspect he's saving his fresh tyre for his second run of Q2. Gian Antonio next to him in 9th, ahead of Zarco Morbidelli, and of course we are still awaiting anything at all from Pedro Acosta.
Made a decision. It's a high-risk strategy, though. Clearly, there must be something on this number one that Pedro is desperate to get out on. In Hungary, was it? He mentioned those special front forks to give him an extra feeling. Maybe it's the same situation again, that he's desperate to go out on that number one bike and take the risk rather than on the number two.
Well, let's hope it is a power-up situation very, very quickly as far as Acosta's concerned. Thanks very much for that information down in pit lane, Jack. Acosta then still to register a lap time in this session. You could see he was full throttle, wide open with the gas, and there was just nothing happening. You can't do that on a 300 horsepower MotoGP bike these days. Mark then back out into the fray. At the moment, second on the grid. Behind, we haven't said that very often, have we, at all in 2025, his factory Ducati colleague, Bagnaia, who is leading the way. A 1:43.341. Potentially putting Bagnaia on pole position for the 26th time in his MotoGP career. 33rd time it would be throughout his Grand Prix career. Here we go then. This is what it's all about, now or never, in terms of the fight for pole position here in Japan.
Pecco Bagnaia's sole pole position this season, of course, came back in Brno. With the greatest of respects, that was a slightly jammy one for Pecco Bagnaia. Of course, came through Q1 and was then held by some late yellow flags and a crash for Marc Marquez. This feels much more serious of a challenge for Bagnaia, who's looked good from his first laps of this circuit on Friday morning. Surely a 43.3 is not going to cut it, because we were quicker than that in Q1. Are we going to potentially get as far as the 42s before this Q2 session is over?
5.5 minutes of the session remaining. We're still waiting the return of Acosta. Jack, down to you again.
That right there is Pedro Acosta at last out on track.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Jack. So finally, Pedro Acosta getting himself into what he hopes will be a battle for his second successive pole position. He's lost 10 minutes of this Q2 session, which is cruel in the extreme for Acosta, who was looking so strong. He'd have been confident of being in the hunt for pole position, no question, having top. To be absolutely precise as Alex. Crikey! That's not the way or the angle that you're supposed to have that Ducati pointed down on the brakes into the 90-degree corner. That shot there just encapsulating just how on the limit, how on the ragged edge Alex is, pushing for a lap time in. In Motegi, what a shot that was. That Ducati was snaking left and then right up to P4 goes Alex. That clearly would have cost him time. Better place. I'm not quite sure how he got that Ducati stopped into 11.
We've got all sorts of red sectors on our time screens. Everyone through the first sector is setting red sectors. Marc Marquez, who we're looking at, quick through the second sector. So is Raul Fernandez. So is the 2020 world champion. As Joan Mir looks to return Honda to the front row of the grid.
Raul Fernandez has only ever had 2 front row starts in his MotoGP career. Look at it, could be better, could be a pole position. There are some steaming hot laps going here late on here in Q2. Every rider pretty much on our screens in the commentary boxes has got red sectors next to their name. Look at it on your screens right now. Fernandez, Morbidelli, Marc, Mir, all on course for pole position. We're going to follow Fernandez over the line first. Can he put it in P1? His second goes Fernandez. Morbidelli briefly into P1. Marc then immediately takes away pole position with a 143.04. Joan Mir with some Motegi magic puts the factory Honda on provisional pole position. Well, what are we watching? Can you believe your eyes? Joan Mir on pole position potentially here on the factory Honda. He's got an abysmal qualifying record in MotoGP.
115 MotoGP starts. The 2020 champion has never been on pole position. But this is Q2, and the Q is for Quartararo. Here comes the Yamaha star now.
We're in the Grand Prix of Japan, and the Japanese factories, well, they are putting up some fight, aren't they, here on home turf. We have a factory Honda on pole position. We could potentially have a Japanese bike 1-2 here in Motegi. Alex Marquez goes up into 4th place, but he's been an excellent rescue job from Q1. Luca Marino now up into 4th. 2 factory Hondas in the top 4 at the moment. You know what, Joan Mir can take something to push Mir off the front row at least.
The rider who's suffering here is Bagnaia. He didn't improve on his second run, or hasn't yet. He's now back down to 6th. Here comes Quartararo then on the factory Yamaha, and he goes onto the front row of the grid in 3rd place.
2 Japanese bikes are now on the front row of the grid. Now this would be a massive shock. This would be a humongous shock if Mir is going to take this pole position. Betseki's lost a whole bunch of time in the 3rd sector.
Watch for
Bagnaia is on the charge as well. Mir too is looking to find potentially a 142 here. We have never had a 142 lap around this mobility resort Motegi. It could be on course for history. It could be delivered by Mir. He powers the Honda out of the final corner. Honda, the power of dreams. Is it going to be a dream home pole position here for Mir over Ronnie Company. It's not an improvement, but Bagnaia at the moment, let's just check him through the third sector. Oh, Bagnaia surely at the moment is going to deliver our first ever 142. Hard on the brakes, he goes in now on the factory Ducati into turn 11. Just 3 corners left then for Bagnaia. Look at Acosta. What a story this could be as far as Acosta is concerned. We'll follow Bagnaia now through the final corner. Surely this is going to be provisional pole. 30 seconds of this unbelievable Q2 session remaining here in Motegi. Bagnaia line, he has delivered a blockbuster lap time. It's the first ever 142 lap here at the Grand Prix of Japan, a 142.911. What did they say? Form is temporary, class is permanent, and that was pure class from Bagnaia.
A banzai from Bagnaia in this Q2 session, a 10th clear of Mir. And I think Mir's going to hang on to this front row of the grid start here because Acosta's lost time. Acosta 10th at the moment. This could still rescue him a place on the front 2 rows of the grid. A session of what might have been for the 37, who has to settle for 4th at best.
That's some job. That's some ride by Acosta, because he'd have been a bit hot on the collar. He just had to keep himself cool. A case of what might have been, you feel, as far as Acosta and KTM are concerned. Because without that early technical issue, there's no doubt about it, he would have been in that hunt for pole position. We pick up then Mark, who's in danger actually being pushed off the front row here, because I thought of Alex on his final flying lap. There's one chicane, very, very rapid in that first sector. Oh, I think Alex might just be losing this. He might just have taken the best out of that Michelin soft rear tyre at the moment, estimated P5. Bagnaia, Mir, Mark at the moment is going to be your front row. Well, we thought Friday was pretty amazing here. We called it Freaky Friday. There was so much going on here in the Grand Prix of Japan. Well, Saturday morning so far, it's been even better, maybe even more dramatic, as we're looking at Pecco Bagnaia on course for just his 2nd pole position of the season. Joan Mir in front of all of the Honda hierarchy. What a moment this could be for HRC in their home Grand Prix, slotting on the front row in their backyard.
Well, that will equal for Mir his best qualifying MotoGP. You have to go back 3.5 years to the 2022 Portuguese Grand Prix at Portimao for the last time he qualified as high as 2nd on the grid. Marini goes 7th on the 2nd of the factory Hondas. Alex Marquez closes the session in 8th place, but it is a 2nd pole, and pole number 26 in MotoGP. Is Bagnaia back? Well, we've got further evidence that the answer might be yes.
It went horribly wrong for Aprilia and Marco Bezzecchi, fastest on Friday here in Japan. Well, they really suffered in that Q2 session. Bez from P1 on Friday to 9th on the grid for the sprint and the Grand Prix here in Motegi. Well, Pecco Bagnaia said he was keeping his feet firmly on terra firma despite his brilliant performance yesterday. But it looks like Bagnaia is back with a bang here in Motegi. On pole position, let's get the thoughts of crew chief Christian Gabarini.
Christian, you've celebrated many pole positions with Pecco, but is the one that's had as much relief attached to it as this one?
Yeah, this one had a different meaning because we, as you know, we struggle a lot for the entire season. Now it looks like maybe we found a way. It's too early to speak about that, but this weekend started quite well and it's keep going like this. And we see sprint race because the race at the end is the reality, is the truth. But yes, we really want it.
Congratulations, great job.
A great job indeed. Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Christian Gabarini. An unbelievable lap time, an absolute blockbuster from Bagnaia. A history-making session. The one and only rider ever here in Motegi to set a lap in the 142s, and it wasn't without his drama, as you saw there. That replay of him looking for a gear up the turn, it looked like he was having some kind of an issue with the gear shifter on the left-hand side of that GP25. That was on the lap before he fired in that mesmerising 142.9. That was absolutely awesome by Bagnaia. As we mentioned yesterday, he's had his critics. At times this season, he's been trying to dig himself out of a full-blown crisis. Look what it means to the 63 side of the factory, the Ducati garage. And what a weekend it's been so far for HRC. 3 bikes in that Q2 session. One of them on the front row, thanks to Joan Mir. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Alberto Puig.
Alberto, what a job that is from Joan. Onto the front row of the grid for the factory's home Grand Prix. Just superb.
Yeah, really good. I mean, yesterday we already saw some chances, but today we had to do it, so still we have to do it later. But yeah, it's a very good start of, let's say, the 2 races, and yeah, he did it. I mean, all Honda riders did a great effort, but Plan was capable of getting that extra speed. And yeah, we are very pleased and happy for the team, for Honda, for the rider, for everyone.
Great result. Well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic result. Not even a tenth of a second away from what would have been just his 3rd ever career pole position, his 1st in MotoGP. Alex Marquez, plenty for him to ponder. At one stage he thought he might be certainly sticking his nose in that fight for the front row. Q1 to P8 for the number 73. What a session that was. What a session it was for Pecco Bagnaia. Absolutely brilliant. Just shows you can't keep a good rider down for too long, can you? He's had so many issues. A confidence crisis, struggling to find any kind of feeling on corner entry, on braking, which has been his strongest point throughout his Ducati career. But we posed the question. He's back. No, I think we can say he's back.
A mixture of joy and relief for Pecco Bagnaia, who
number 1 player, right, a whack there.
Yeah, not many times he's been able to park his Ducati in front of that this year. As mentioned, it's the 2nd pole of the season, but there were no yellow flags, there was no fortune attached to that one. He went out there and grabbed it. World champions across our front row of the grid. Marc Marquez, of course, on the brink, potentially 24 or so hours away from a 7th MotoGP World Championship. The 2020 World Champion, Joan Mir, starts 2nd, and the double World Champion, Pecco Bagnaia, back on pole.
I think those 3 got away one today, though, because I think Acosta, had he not had that issue with the throttle in the early part of that session, had he been able to do 2 time attacks, all this for Watson maybes, but it's cruel to see Acosta deny the chance to fight for that pole position on a level playing field. He missed 10 minutes of that Q2, and you have to say he did an absolutely sterling job to get himself anywhere near the front row. In fact, he wasn't even 300ths behind Mark, despite the fact he had 1 pop at it on a Michelin soft rear tyre. It should be more than the motivation that Acosta needs to rectify it in the sprint and the Grand Prix tomorrow. 12 laps will be going sprint action at 3 p.m. local time this afternoon, double the distance on Sunday afternoon, over 24 laps. There's not been too many moments to smile about or celebrate in 2025 for Pecco Bagnaia and his factory Ducati crew, so I'm sure several emotions. Here is, of course, Marc Marquez. That's a great moment, of course, coming to acknowledge the factory Honda team. So many of them still very much heavily involved with HRC. Santi Hernandez, of course, who was a constant companion at the side of Mark for so many of his World Championship triumphs. Well, he was with him, all of them, the previous 6. Marc Marquez will fire away from the front row as he tries to convert that first match point here tomorrow in Motegi. Let's see his thoughts with Jack.
Well, Mark, we can see by the scuffs on the right-hand side, it's not been a simple weekend so far, but to be on the front row ahead of course, the match point later on tomorrow, is that the best you could hope for?
Yeah, nobody said that it will be easy, but honestly speaking, I feel better and better. It's true that that small crash in FP3, what the fuck, affect a bit the confidence, but then on the quali, I felt comfortable with the bike, especially with the last run. I saw that every time I go out on the track, I feel better and better. So yeah, target done. But it was the front row. Now we will try to achieve our main target, that is try to fight for the podium in the sprint race. First target, I say, and the main target tomorrow.
Good job, well done.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, there's almost those Q2 stinging the tail, wasn't there, as far as Mark is concerned? Pesky little insect hovering around his head. No dramas though for Mark. Just a quick apology we have to do it just for his language. He reacted to the bug hovering around his bonds. There he is on the front row, and he's in the game, he's in the hunt. He feels like he was stronger and more confident on that factory Ducati in this morning session, despite the spill at turn 5 in FD2. And that was a wonderful shot, wasn't it, as he congratulated so many of his former HRC crew. It's great, isn't it? It's wonderful to see Honda starting to find some pace, find some form again. Of course, for so many years, they were the untouchable, unrivaled, dominant force in the MotoGP World Championship, until there was the European Renaissance led by Ducati, backed by both Aprilia and KTM. That young Marquez fan, yeah, no wonder she's smiling and very happy with her hero's morning's work. I've been weighing a bigger smile tomorrow if Mark can get the job done. Here is then Joan Mir. What a performance, the star in many respects of that Q2 session. So close to his first ever MotoGP pole position. Let's get Mir's thoughts with Jack.
John, what an incredible job, matching your best ever qualifying performance in MotoGP from Portugal 2022. First front row for Honda, here of all places as well, but is there a part of you slightly disappointed to have missed out on pole by such a small margin?
Well, not disappointed because at the end everything what we can get from here is a reward. So this second position tastes like a pole position. So we have to be happy because we come from a very difficult moments, difficult situations, and being back in front row is a great position to start both races and try to do a solid weekend.
Brilliant lap, well done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just a third front row start in 2025 for a Honda rider. Johan Zarco, of course, from the front row in Argentina and most recently at Sachsenring in Germany. What a ride. What a performance that was by Joan Mir. He will know, though, the most important part of the weekend is still to come. But make no mistake, Mir and Honda starting to find some top form. His teammate Marini will go from 7th place. Well, they've not had a lot to smile about, have they, over the last few years? HRC squad, well, that's a buzzing atmosphere down in the Honda camp, as we get to hear very shortly from our new record breaker. Yeah, that's the number that matters at the end of that Q2 session, number 63. With a blistering all-time lap record. Brilliant by Bagnaia, a 1:42.911. Only Mir within a tenth of the 28-year-old Italian. He completed a double victory here last year. Did Pecco, won the sprint, won the Grand Prix, and he might take some stopping over the 36 racing laps coming your way here at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Well, Marquez, he won't want to lose the battle, will he? But he might win the war. Pecco, husband, I'm afraid to say. Pecco's already tied the knots.
My husband, I think she said that.
An all-time lap record. First ever 1:42 lap we've ever seen here in Japan. Over a tenth inside of Pedro Acosta's benchmark. And here he is then, our record breaker, our history maker here in Motegi, on pole position in the Grand Prix of Japan. Pecco Bagnaia with Jack.
Pecco, the first ever 1:42 lap of Motegi, but more than the record, this feels like a significant one. After a year of troubles and frustration, can we say Bagnaia is back?
The truth is that Mark last year did 42 for the first time, but I don't finish out because he touched the green. But in any case, happy. I don't want to say it, but in any case, I was. It's incredible right now, the feeling that I'm having. I feel that I can push. I feel that I can do what I want with my bike. It was something that I was missing from last year, so super happy with it. It's true that in Brno I already did a pole position this season. But honestly, I don't know why I did it. In this case, I pushed a lot, and I was knowing that was coming after all the weekend. I was knowing that pushing like this I was able for the feeling I was having with my bike. So fantastic. I want to say thanks to the team that tonight did an amazing job to try to give me 2 specs of the bike in a very similar way, because we started the weekend with the setup of Misano, but was difficult to do it for both our bikes, so they did an amazing job.
Great to see you smiling. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
His team did an amazing job, and so did the rider. Some performance that by Bagnaia as he clinches pole position, number 26 in his MotoGP career. And now, that's 2 sprints and Grand Prix here in Japan. He has not finished off the podium. Big smiles all round. Gigi Dell'Igna and Davide Tardozzi, they have stood by their rider. They have never wavered in their support and their drive to get Bagnaia back to the top, back where he belongs in MotoGP. And 2 factory Ducatis on the front row. And an acknowledgement from Mark there to Bagnaia. Nobody knows more than Mark how special that lap would have been. 142.911.
There's no question as well that Marc Marquez wants to battle the best version of Pecco Bagnaia. That's why, in many respects, he moved to Ducati. Of course, he wanted to win again. He wanted to take on one of the very best of the last few years in his own territory. And Pecco Bagnaia has really been a shadow of the 2-time world champion that we know him to be for much of this season. But the signs have been there through this weekend. Further evidence this morning that Pecco Bagnaia might well be back. But so might be Honda as they take their 3rd front row start of the season. As all 3 on the front row here for the Japanese Grand Prix, underlining their world champion credentials.
And will that rider be world champion once again at the end of play here in the Grand Prix of Japan? Alex Marquez has work to do. A lot of work to do from the middle of the 3rd row in 8th place if we are to get the title celebration delayed into Mandalika.
So Pecco Bagnaia takes his 2nd pole of 2025. Joan Mir equals the best qualifying of his MotoGP career. Marc Marquez in the front row in 3rd. Pedro Acosta, despite losing over half the session, took 4th. Fabio Quartararo shows that 4 world champions starting the top 5, with Frankie Morbidelli 6th via Q1. Marini 7th ahead of Alex Marquez through Q1 to 8th. Bezzecchi will be disappointed with 9th. Zarco just behind Ralph Fernandez and ahead of Fabio Gian Antonio, who will start on row 4. Ogura, Miller and Aldeguer on row 5 later on ahead of Oliveira. Martin down in 17th on the grid ahead of Brad Binder, who had a big crash in Q1. Rins also going down in that Q1 session to finish 19th ahead of Taka Nakagami, Anea Bastianini, Somkat Chandra and the miserable Maverick Vinales, who will start right down at the very back of the field. BMW M Award, Marc Marquez has a 71 point advantage now over Alex Marquez. Fabio Quartararo sits 3rd. Pecco Bagnaia taking 25 points after returning to pole position today.
Well, Friday was fantastic here in Japan. Saturday so far has been spectacular, and maybe the best is still to come. We certainly hope so. I'm sure wherever you are watching in the world, you have enjoyed what has unfolded so far here in